I'm Luke Coffey, Senior Fellow at Hudson Institute. Today I'm in Vienna, Austria, here with the leader of the National Resistance Front of Afghanistan, Ahmad Massoud. We're in Vienna because the Vienna process for a Democratic Afghanistan Summit just finished its 5th iteration. We are here today to talk about the future of Afghanistan, the National Resistance Front and their activities in Afghanistan, the diplomatic track that many Afghan opposition groups are pursuing around the world, and then, of course, what America and the United States can do to help not only Afghans, but specifically the National Resistance Front. Mr. Massoud, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule to meet with me today. There'll be many viewers watching this who may not know much about the current situation in Afghanistan and specifically the National Resistance Front. Can you tell us a little bit about how it came about and what role you're playing today inside Afghanistan?
Sure. First and foremost, thank you so much for having me and thank you so much for coming here. NRF, as you mentioned, it stands for National Resistance Front. It was a reaction of the people of Afghanistan against the oppression of the Taliban after the fall of the previous Afghan Republic in 2021, 15th of August. When the Taliban ignored all the promises they made for creating a government which is accountable to people and also the promises they had to the world, a reaction toward that was the people stood against the tyranny, against extremism and against the terrorism and basically continued the war on terror and continued a fight for a dignified Afghanistan, a life to live with dignity. And that's how the NRF, with the effort of people, came into existence after the fall of Kabul.
And is it safe to say that the NRF today, with your leadership, has its roots in the Northern Alliance that many Americans will be familiar with in the 1990s, where your late father commanded and was very active in against before the Northern Alliance, against the Soviet occupation, but then under the guise of the Northern Alliance, the Taliban.
Yeah. Well, in the 90s, when at that time also the Taliban, with the support and the help of international terrorism, and in particularly Al-Qaeda, when they came into existence, when they came in, they captured Kabul. At that time as well, with the leadership of my father, Ahmad Massoud, the legendary commander who fought against the Soviet, as you mentioned.
The Lion of Panjshir.
The Lion of Panjshir, exactly. He stood against the Taliban and Al-Qaeda and refused their demand and created a national resistance against them, which called National Resistance United Front of Resistance at that time, and stood against them and actually managed to bring him to the verge of accepting that a military takeover or a military success, it is not possible against someone like Ahmad Massoud. And they realized that, so they turned into assassination, and they came with a plan to both assassinate my father 2 days before attacking 9/11. Yeah,
which made it clear that it was all a coordinated plan between the Taliban and Al-Qaeda to perpetrate that horrific attack against your father. I want to talk about the military dimension in Afghanistan in a bit, but first I want to take us back to why we're here in Vienna. I had the honor of addressing the Vienna process meeting today as part of the international panel. Can you tell us a little bit about what makes this gathering, this 5th meeting of the Vienna process, different from previous iterations of this meeting? And what were the big takeaways? What are the diplomatic efforts that not only your leadership with the NRF are undertaking, but also I saw today many different Afghan groups from different walks of life participating as well. So what can you tell us about the diplomatic track in terms of resisting the Taliban?
Absolutely. Well, the sole purpose, as the name is also suggesting, a track for a democratic Afghanistan, because in the past we had always this sad experience of winning the war but failing in political dimension. For example, in the time of Mujahideen managed to actually defeat the Soviets, but they got stuck in the internal issues. This time we are very much sure with the current behavior of the Taliban, with their extremist approach, with their dogmatic ideology, and with them working as close as possible with international and regional terrorist groups. Their demise and fall is imminent. It's just a matter of time. So for us, we need to be ready for both, to fill that void, to create the alternative, and to prevent another phase of internal issues. To do that, we need to talk about what we want for Afghanistan in a very democratic manner, in a democratic setting, in a safe setting in here. This was basically the main goal of the Vienna process. And we have been very successful that from where we started, as you saw in the fifth round of talk, it is much broader, it is much more inclusive, and actually the first and second, it was about bringing as much of the Afghan diaspora in groups as possible. The third, we were speaking to each other, what do we want for future of Afghanistan? In the fourth round, we came up with a roadmap that, okay, now that we have step by step, we are coming forward, and the roadmap should be there that how can we reach the goal that we just agreed on. In this round of talk, we presented the roadmap to all the participants, and we created a commission to now engage with many other groups, Afghan groups, inside and outside Afghanistan, and with the different countries around the globe and with the world, to tell them, this is the plan, this is the vision, this is the commitment and effort, and this is the inclusivity that we have, which represent across Afghanistan, and we are united for one goal, one commitment, and one effort for a democratic, free, and stable Afghanistan.
So you've outlined the successes of the 5 meetings so far of the Vienna process. Sticking with the diplomatic track, what's next? What work remains as you prepare for the next Vienna process meeting? And I should tell viewers that these meetings occur about twice a year, roughly. So, what are you thinking about now after the successful Vienna process meeting that was just held this week?
Well, we are hoping in the next round of Vienna process, we will have more engagement by the world and international community and international organizations to be more engaged, because as far as I see with the failure of Doha process, Vienna process is the only process which has the trust and the respect and the attention of the people of Afghanistan, and show that it has the stage that can bring unity among all groups from all corners of Afghanistan, and has the credibility and has the potential with the support of the world to be a stage to truly, finally bring a lasting peace in Afghanistan.
Yeah. And now turning to the military side of things, the National Resistance Front is very active in Afghanistan today. What can you tell us about the makeup of the NRF, the sort of activities you are doing? I think many of our viewers will be interested to learn more about this. I remember soon after the Taliban retook Kabul in August of 2021, how I felt as an American and also as a veteran of Afghanistan. I felt shame, I felt embarrassment, a sense of betrayal of America to our Afghan partners and our allies. And then I remember seeing on social media videos, including, I believe, one of you landing in Panjshir Valley, your family's homeland, to start the armed resistance. And today I know that there are many fighters still on the ground risking their lives to try to make Afghanistan a better place. And that brings inspiration to people who see this from around the world. So what can you tell us about what is going on the ground in a military armed resistance context?
Sure. Well, as I explained about the Vienna process and how it is the political approach of the people of Afghanistan and the resistance of people of Afghanistan, and the military side, it proves that it is not basically just fighting for the sake of fighting. We are fighting for this thing that we said it in Vienna. Why we are fighting? We are fighting for these values, which you saw today in Vienna. After the Doha agreement, after the Taliban disrespecting and basically ignoring the Doha agreement and capturing Kabul by force, in ignoring all the efforts and the progresses of peace process at that time, we were left with no choice but to stand and fight against the Taliban. The Taliban, which actually brought more than 30,000 forces to fight against us. As you mentioned, the last place which was still free of the Taliban prisons, which was Panjshir. And not only it was the Taliban, that they brought international terrorists with them, which we have the footage of them. Arab terrorists, Chechen terrorists, and others, they joined them to fight against us. So we were left with no choice but to actually fight them and stand. The Taliban thought it is a very quick and blitz operation that they can come and they can conquer and we will disappear from the face of the earth. But not only it didn't happen, but we are holding the 5th round of talk in Vienna, and as you actually saw, we are spreading to more than 90 and 20 provinces across Afghanistan, and we are very much alive, we are very much active.
It is extraordinary how much you've been able to accomplish in such a relatively short amount of time with virtually no formal international support. And I want to get to that in a little bit, the lack of support you're getting from your traditional or your natural allies. And I will say today at the Vienna process meeting, one thing that really stood out was the absence of any senior U.S. official. If the U.S. government is willing to engage with the Taliban as the de facto occupiers of Afghanistan, and we play this game in Doha with them, I just find it extraordinary that we won't send a high-level representative here in Vienna when in one place you have so many different ethnic groups, interests, members of civil society represented in one place. I think the U.S. government could learn a lot about the situation in Afghanistan. So I think it was a missed opportunity. But can you tell us about what the situation is like with the Taliban in Afghanistan? Are they as divided as we read about in the media? Are they fracturing? Tell us a little bit about the humanitarian situation, the human rights situation that many Afghans are facing.
Sure. Regarding the situation inside Afghanistan, I will give a few examples. First and foremost, one thing that actually kept Taliban together was the continued financial support of international community to Afghanistan. Basically, it was an open feast that they were very busy abusing all those support which was coming to Kabul. After the cut of those aids to Afghanistan, you saw how it impacted and affected them, that you see the division among them. The first thing, yes, the division among them is very real. It is not some propaganda. However, only that it is not enough for a change in Afghanistan. Second, economically the situation in Afghanistan is getting worse because the Taliban are completely abusing and misusing the internal income of Afghanistan for their own. So the people of Afghanistan are being left with nothing, And they are using drastic measures like closure of the Saray Shahzada, which is basically the market of Afghanistan, how they closed it to control the bazaar, to control the market, and to control the inflation, and drop of the Afghan value, which still it dropped. And also how people are very much hungry and starving, and they are leaving, based on the UN report and the regional countries report, the Afghans actually immigrating and leaving their country, it increased this year than the last year. If the Taliban provided such a security and safe and heaven, why people are leaving? Millions have left Afghanistan since they took over. And also, again, you do not need to trust my information, although it's very, how to say it, my information is not really bad, but for example, we rightly predicted and knew where Ayman al-Zawahiri is months before he was struck down, or how we mentioned that Taliban did not cut tie with Al-Qaeda. In the latest Security Council report, it is, and also in the Telegraph also they mentioned, it verified our claim that very much Taliban are still engaged and involved and cooperated, and they're working and cooperating with Al-Qaeda. So their engagement with terrorist groups and regional and international is very much still going on. And last thing, that lie that they said, oh, we provided security. You're seeing the security inside Afghanistan, that it is nothing but a sham. Still, it's very much insecure. The kidnapping has increased drastically. And also, as you see that the resistance fighters and the Freedom Front fighters and many others are becoming very much actually courageous, and they're operating on a much bigger scale. And so that idea of the Taliban also, it failed. And the recent event, more and more senior Taliban officials are leaving their posts.
And they're defecting, or are they just melting away?
It is just like, they're leaving their posts. Haqqani, it's been like, weeks, he's not coming to the office. The latest Minister of Justice, he actually just left because he said, there are meddling in my work. And he was not happy about it. And many on the lower level commanders are leaving their post. They are not happy. It is happening in a span of just, let's say, 1 month of the current administration cutting those aids to Afghanistan. Imagine if there was actually a serious effort to put pressure on the Taliban. You would see how quickly the house of cards that they created would fall.
And we may be heading that way. And I wanted to ask you about the new Trump administration. Of course, it was the Trump administration the first time around that negotiated the deal with the Taliban. And it's now clear that the Afghan government wasn't as involved as it should have been. Yes. But it was President Biden, who decided to implement the plan, even though he had the choice, regardless of what he says. He could have changed it very easily, but he decided to pull the plug and get out, and we saw what happened. We saw the world saw what happened unfolding on the internet and on television, and now the Afghan people are living with the consequences. But now President Trump is back. He has a new national security team. Several high-ranking members of his national security team have served in Afghanistan, which is a huge departure from his first term. So they have a more intimate understanding of the country and the threats that the Taliban pose and the Al-Qaeda and Daesh pose to the country and to the international community. What are you hoping for? Like, what are you? How are you looking to engage with this new administration to try to make the case as to not only why the NRF should get help from the United States, but also what you can do to maybe help the United States and advance some of its national interests?
Sure. Well, regarding the Trump making the decision of negotiating President Trump with the Taliban and also with the whole Doha negotiation, I believe if Mr. Trump would have stayed in power, maybe he would have handled it differently than how Mr. Biden actually handled it. Maybe he would actually see to and make sure for the Taliban to stick to the deal, because the Taliban broke that deal.
Yes.
In that deal, it was the Taliban should not be engaged in any shape or form with Al-Qaeda. They are still very much connected. Second, in that deal, it was that the Taliban should not take over Kabul militarily. They exactly did that. In that deal, it was that the Taliban should be a part of an inclusive government, sort of a transition government. It was completely ignored. And many other aspects of that deal was being compromised by the Taliban. So if Mr. President Trump would still be in power, I think he would have made sure for it to be implemented differently, which would benefit all parties probably, maybe, or maybe not, I don't know. However, right now what can happen is, I think Afghanistan is still a country that can pose a huge threat based on the current situation in Afghanistan, based on the terrorism which is still in Afghanistan, and also many other big plays and factors that you know. In this regard, I believe ignoring situation in Afghanistan and finding a liable strategic partner, which can be a government, a legitimate government in Afghanistan, any tactical approach, for example, using Taliban to be only eyes or ears, or to use them to fight against Daesh, they create the tools for Daesh to use. They created hundreds and thousands of jihadi madrasa that they are easily being recruited by the Daesh. So these two are two sides of one coin.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what can Afghans do in this regard to ensure the safety and security of the world and the countries? I believe that instead of just finding or thinking about deporting the Afghans from America, or basically bringing them and to relocate them to America, why not think about helping a safe zone inside Afghanistan, a buffer zone in Afghanistan, or how actually in Iraq it happened to some extent, and in Syria it happened to some extent. As much as I'm connected to the people, to the Afghan forces, to Afghan armed forces who left the country, they do not want to settle in the foreign land. They want to come back to their country. They want to fight for their country, and they want to liberate their country. Why not help them? We do not require and we do not want boots on the ground, but help them liberate their country or a portion of it and seize it and create a safe zone. So all Afghans who are immigrated to regional countries, to Europe or America, to return to their own country, as well as having people to work with which has same values and beliefs, to fight against terrorism, which has complete different ideology. How can you fight Daesh, which has the same ideology, with the Taliban, which has the same ideology?
Exactly, and I think there's more awareness now in the United States about the emerging and growing terrorism threat coming from Afghanistan, not only as highlighted in various UN reports, but I mean, everyone can see that, on social media, the operations of Daesh or Al-Qaeda in the country, it's quite alarming. And from a U.S. point of view, unless we find a credible partner on the ground, and it's not going to be the Taliban, no matter what they say.
Yes.
It's more likely to be a group like the NRF, unless we can find a credible partner on the ground to work with, to build their capacities, to build their capabilities, then the U.S. is basically blind.
Yes.
With what's happening in Afghanistan. So I think that's a very important point. Now, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have not received any formal or official support, whether it's diplomatic, economic, military support from any NATO member, as far as I know. Is that correct?
Well, let's say I have not received any formal or informal support by any country.
Even informal, even off the record, behind the scenes?
Off the record, behind the scene, informal or formal support by any country. If I had, we would be having this discussion in Afghanistan.
Yes, and someday I hope that we will.
Because the thing is that I know the strength of the Taliban. It has been exaggerated. We are fighting with empty hands against them. One thing is that we have been very vocal about it. We do not want others to fight our wars. But we want the world to also not forget about us, to help us and support us. Because what is being cooked inside Afghanistan right now, it is the meal that is being prepared for others, not us. We are already in this devastated situation. So those thousands of jihadi madrasas, which create jihadi terrorists, where they are training them for, where they are educating them for, to capture Kabul or Kandahar, it's already captured.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It should serve as a wake-up call for us in the international community that we need to get more engaged. We can't ignore Afghanistan like we did in the 1990s because we saw what happened, and the last thing we need is a repeat of that. Mr. Massoud, thank you so much for taking time to talk with me today. You should know that there are hundreds of thousands of American veterans who served in Afghanistan alongside their family members who are on your side, who support what you and your resistance fighters are doing, especially considering that many of them were trained and fought alongside American service personnel. So I wish you and your efforts the best of luck, Godspeed, and may you prevail. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I pass my kindest regards to all of them and to all American people. In my opinion, I believe that American people are of the greatest, and they are a great nation, a great country. And their role in the world, it's a very important role, and I hope for them to understand this role and to see it, and to know that we are living in such connected world that we cannot ignore each other's concerns and problems. And also regarding Afghanistan, I wish it was an issue of only Afghans. We are the victim of geopolitical games, and you know it. And we need help and support, and we need the world to understand that Afghanistan can be helped and supported to change this and to really, once again, be a country where girls can go to school, they can listen to music, they can draw a picture, and they can watch a comedy show on their TV. All of those things which I just mentioned to you, it's gone from Afghanistan.
Something we take for granted every single day. Well, Mr. Massoud, I hope to see you in Washington sometime. I do know that there's a petition out there with over 400,000 signatures, I believe, saying that you should be invited formally to visit Washington, D.C. and make your case to the American people and the American policymakers. So I hope that will happen. And I want to thank our online viewers for tuning in today. If you'd like to learn more about this subject or others